He gave her the island he once promised me, while I carried his child. I gave up my career, my name, my pride, for a man who handed my life to someone else. But I didn't break. I rose. They tried to make me the placeholder wife, the silent shadow. Instead, I became the woman who took the whole kingdom, and never looked back. It was just past noon when my phone began vibrating furiously on the marble counter of the OB/GYN clinic. The doctor had just confirmed it. 7 weeks pregnant. A tiny life fluttering within me, warm and fragile. I was supposed to be filled with joy, wasn't I? But as I stared at the phone screen, my blood turned to ice. Breaking news. Julian Blackwell spotted greeting Vivienne Steele at Westbridge International. A surprise island gift. A high-resolution photo blazed across the screen. Julian, my husband, standing with a radiant woman in white, her hand hooked into the crook of his arm, her smile glowing as cameras flashed around them. Behind them, a private jet and a banner that read, "Welcome home, Vivienne." I'd never heard him mention she was back. Vivienne Steele. His white moonlight. The woman I was never supposed to compete with. I slowly scrolled through the feed. The second post crushed what was left of my composure. Julian Blackwell purchases private Crescent Isle for Vivienne Steele. Rumored to be a gift for her return to Westbridge. My fingers trembled as I shut off the screen. I should have cried. Screamed. Something. But my stomach twisted, nausea rising. Not from the pregnancy but the betrayal blooming cold inside me. Julian and I had been married for 5 years. Every year we postponed our honeymoon. He always had a reason. The merger, the board, the quarterly earnings. I'd learned to smile through disappointment. But this was deliberate. I arrived at Hawthorne Estate an hour later, my steps silent as I entered the grand Blackstone foyer. The ancestral home of the Blackwell family stood like a fortress, cold, commanding, built on centuries of wealth and ego. Inside, my mother-in-law, Eleanor Blackwell, lounged regally on the cream velvet settee in the drawing room, a glossy fashion magazine spread across her lap. She didn't look up when I entered. Her eyes were fixated on the cover. I glanced over. Vivienne Steele, in all her aristocratic glory, graced the cover of Westbridge Society Monthly. Sleek brunette waves. Graceful swan-like neck. That same infuriating smile. Eleanor's lips curled proudly as if she'd birthed Vivienne herself. Then she saw me, and the smile died. "Claire," she said flatly. Her eyes trailed down my outfit. Navy maternity jeans and oatmeal sweater flats. "You wore that out in public?" She snorted. Vivienne wouldn't be caught dead in elastic waistbands. I gave her a blank look. I had no intention of trading barbs today. She flipped to a page inside the magazine and held it up for me to see. Look at her. Elegant. Noble. Descended from European royalty on her mother's side. That's the kind of woman worthy of the Blackwell name. I stared at the article, at the woman my husband had chosen to buy an island for. And then I smiled. "I'm sure she'll make someone very happy," I said. "Eventually." "Someone like Julian," she said, satisfied. Before I could respond, the pitter-patter of designer heels echoed from upstairs. Delilah Blackwell came down the staircase, wearing a two-tone mini dress that likely cost more than my monthly salary back when I was a surgeon. "Sis," she chirped, linking her arm in mine. "Don't listen to Mom. You still look okay for, someone basic." I blinked. She turned to Eleanor and sighed dramatically. "I mean, obviously Vivienne and Julian were meant to be. They would have had such cute kids. Everyone at school used to say so." She paused suddenly, glancing at my expression. "Oh, oops. Sorry, sister-in-law. Just kidding." She wasn't. I kept smiling. "Delilah, do you know what happens when you cut someone's pocket money in half?" She blinked. "What?" "Nothing much," I said sweetly. "But it might make them think twice before speaking." Her face paled. The room fell awkwardly silent. That evening I sat alone in the guest lounge of our city villa, far from the ancestral home, surrounded by silence. I'd begged Julian to move us here early in our marriage, hoping for peace. He agreed, if only to quiet me. The flat-screen TV played yet another news segment about Vivienne's triumphant return to Westbridge. Took over Steele Ventures on her first day back. Attended by industry moguls. Rumored romantic reconciliation with Julian Blackwell. I muted the television. My hand brushed across my belly. He hadn't told me she was back. He hadn't told me he was buying her an island. He hadn't even told me she'd be at the gala tonight. Late that night, Julian stumbled through the front door smelling of scotch and sea breeze. I helped him onto the couch, wordless, silent. Just as he dozed off, his phone buzzed. Vivienne Steele. I answered without hesitation. Julian, her voice purred through the line. Are you home yet? My voice was saccharine. Yes. He's fast asleep. A long pause. Miss Whitmore, she said slowly. No need to be so polite. I just wanted to check in. Julian drank quite a bit tonight. I'm aware, I said coolly. He skipped dinner with his mother to welcome you back. What an occasion. Vivienne's tone hardened. Please thank him for the lovely island. It's exquisite. I'm touched. I glanced at the ceiling. Don't mention it. I'll be sure to include it in our next joint tax filing. Her breath hitched. I'm surprised you're still answering his phone, Claire, she said finally. You know he only ever smiles that way around me. I smiled. Well then, I purred. He must have a lot of practice smiling behind your back. She hung up. I stared down at Julian, unconscious and blissfully unaware. Enjoy the cold soak, my love. I hauled him into the bathroom, dumped 2 bags of ice into the tub, and left him there to marinate in poor decisions and melted luxury. The next morning I found him shivering on the couch, wrapped in a towel and sniffling. Did you take a bath last night? I asked innocently. He glared. You know I did. The water was very cold. I tilted my head. That sounds reckless. You could catch a cold. Julian rubbed his temple, but there was no heat in it. He looked exhausted. His mother called just then, screaming into the phone about how I failed to serve her dinner and how Delilah was now emotionally traumatized by my threats. I didn't even blink. I had a lawyer's appointment that afternoon. The real storm was coming. They thought I was the Cinderella who'd be swept out of the palace. But I wasn't leaving. I was going to own the palace. And then I was going to evict them all. One by one. I'd always thought falling in love would feel like fireworks. Dizzying, blinding, euphoric. But when I met Julian Blackwell for the first time, it wasn't sparks that hit me. It was blood. A hospital corridor. A man bleeding from a knife wound. And me, still in scrubs, my hands covered in someone else's life. It had started with a routine shift. An elderly patient had been admitted with a rare autoimmune crisis, her vitals collapsing. I was one of 3 surgeons in the entire region qualified to operate on her condition. I didn't know her name, not until Julian stormed in, demanding to take responsibility for her chart. That was the first time I met him. Calm, controlled, powerful. She's my grandmother, he said. I'll do my best, I replied. I kept my word. I operated for 13 hours straight. Her condition stabilized by dawn. What none of us knew was that 2 floors down, a patient had just lost their wife due to medical negligence. When I went to sign post-op reports, he stormed in with a knife. Nurses scattered. Julian, of all people, was the one who shielded me. I remember the glint of the blade. The sound of fabric tearing. Julian's sharp intake of breath. I pulled him out of the way just in time, but the blade found me instead, right across my right palm. The nerve damage was extensive. My surgical career was over. The Blackwells paid the hospital damages. Julian's grandmother, Edith Blackwell, insisted on repaying me with more than money. She gave me another chance at life, she said. Julian, she's a rare woman. Don't waste her. 3 months later we were married. I sat at my vanity now, brushing my hair absent-mindedly as those memories danced through my mind. The silver scar on my palm was barely visible anymore, but the loss of my career still throbbed like a phantom limb. Julian had promised me everything. A new life. A home. A future. And now he was playing house with Vivienne Steele. The invitation arrived on glossy cardstock, gilded and embossed. Blackwell Foundation Annual Charity Auction. I'd almost forgotten. The event was held every year at the Westbridge Opera House. A glittering affair attended by CEOs, philanthropists, and socialites. As Julian's wife, I was expected to attend, smile, and be silent. But this year was different. I had plans to watch. Not to perform. The night of the auction, I wore an emerald velvet gown with a low back, my baby bump still small enough to go unnoticed. My hair was swept up. My lips were a dark red. It wasn't vanity, it was armor. Inside the opera house, chandeliers dripped crystals onto glass-top tables. Champagne floated like air. My entrance turned only a few heads, not many. I'd always been regarded as a polite accessory in Julian's world. I spotted Vivienne before she saw me. She was flanked by 2 hedge fund heirs and a film producer, laughing delicately as she accepted compliments. Her satin dress was pearl white, predictably. Her hand brushed back her hair and I froze. The bracelet. A simple regal bangle set with 3 green stones and etched with the Blackwell crest. I'd only seen it once before, on Edith's wrist the day she whispered in my ear at the wedding. "This is for my granddaughter-in-law. Only you." It had vanished after her funeral. Julian said he didn't know where it had gone. No. It was gleaming on Vivienne's wrist as she raised her glass in a toast. I stood a short distance away, eavesdropping as voices began to flutter. "Is that the heirloom bracelet? Oh my God, that's a Blackwell treasure, isn't it? Did Julian give it to her?" Vivienne didn't answer. But she smiled demurely, letting the light catch the bracelet just enough to stir gossip. She didn't need to say yes. Her silence was affirmation enough. I clenched the stem of my glass. He wanted my place. She wasn't just the returning ex. She wasn't here to rekindle a romance. She was here to erase me. "Claire," a voice behind me said. I turned to see Nadine, a fellow board wife and longtime family friend. "I didn't expect to see you tonight." "Neither did I," said, forcing a smile. Her eyes flicked toward Vivienne. "Do you want to say something?" "About what?" I said, sipping my drink. He gave me a look. "Come on. That bracelet means nothing," I said smoothly. "It's a trinket. She can wear what she wants." But my smile faltered when I looked again and saw Julian enter. He walked to Vivienne, straightened the clasp on her bracelet like it was instinct, and leaned in to whisper something. She laughed like they shared a secret. That was it. I turned on my heel and walked into the balcony corridor, heart pounding. The baby shifted inside me as if sensing the tremor in my body. "I'm sorry," I whispered to the child. "I thought your father would be better than this." That night, Julian came home past midnight. I watched him as he undid his tie, clearly not expecting me to be awake. "Was Vivienne wearing Grandma's bracelet tonight?" I asked casually. He blinked, visibly startled. I didn't notice." I set down my book. "You helped her clasp it." He paused. "It was just a piece of jewelry." I nodded. "The one that Edith specifically said should go to her granddaughter-in-law." Julian ran a hand through his hair. "Claire, don't do this." "Do what?" I said, voice quiet. "Notice." He didn't respond. Instead, he walked into the bathroom and shut the door. And I stood there staring at the bedroom mirror. Pregnant. Betrayed. Still expected to smile at society events while another woman wore my crown. I reached into my nightstand drawer and pulled out the velvet folder marked confidential. Inside it was a document I'd been preparing silently for the last 2 months. Irrevocable power of attorney. Shareholder amendment addendum. Pre-divorce marital assets review. I wasn't walking away with nothing. I was walking away with everything. The divorce papers were delivered without a whisper. I signed them late one night under the soft light of the hallway lamp, each pen stroke sharp and deliberate. A courier picked them up at dawn. Julian hadn't come home that night, not that it mattered. He would receive them wherever he was. The address on the envelope was his private office in the Blackwell Group Tower. I didn't cry. I just watched the morning sun slip through the curtains, touching the scar on my hand like a kiss from an old ghost. My fingers flexed, now useless for surgery but more than capable of writing an end to this farce. It was time. Later that afternoon, Delilah texted me out of nowhere. "Delilah, shopping, smiley face. Need retail therapy. Mom's being a monster again." I stared at the message, wondering what game she was playing. She hadn't invited me anywhere in months, not unless she needed me to foot the bill. Which of course she always did. So I said yes. I wanted to see what she would try next. She greeted me outside the glass-fronted boutique in Westbridge's designer district like we were the best of friends. Long blonde waves, oversized sunglasses and a chirpy voice she'd practiced from reality TV. "Sis," she called out, looping her arm through mine. "You look less tired than usual." "Thank you," I said with a tight smile. "You look expensive." She preened. "Gucci pre-fall. Daddy would have hated it. By Daddy, she meant her late father, Julian's father. The man who never once acknowledged my presence while alive. Delilah tugged me through racks of clothes like a personal assistant, every now and then throwing something absurdly priced into the arms of the attendant. As usual, everything went on my card. You know, Vivienne was spotted in this exact store a week ago, she said, flipping through scarves. She has amazing taste. Julian's so lucky to have someone who gets fashion. I said nothing. Anyway, she went on breezily, I feel bad for you, Claire. All this chaos. Men are trash. Want me to introduce you to some hot guys? I turned slowly to face her. I beg your pardon? Like, for fun? You know, make Julian jealous. She wiggled her eyebrows. I know some really cute juniors at school. You deserve a rebound. I smiled. That's very sweet of you, Delilah. But perhaps you should save that energy for your own love life. She looked momentarily offended. Or your school performance, I added, walking toward the cashier and handing over my black card. I hear your GPA is competing with room temperature. She gawked as the assistant swiped my card. I leaned in and whispered, I wonder what happens if this card suddenly stops working for you. Her lips parted, the color draining from her cheeks. This was no longer the Claire she used to bully. That evening, the Blackwell Foundation held its annual winter gala at the Westbridge Conservatory. I was supposed to stay home and rest. Instead, I chose a fitted black velvet gown with a plunging neckline and sleeves like armor. Subtle makeup. Red lips. Hair sleek and pulled back as if daring anyone to challenge me. Julian arrived separately. I knew because I saw the photos already circulating online. Blackwell Eyre and Vivienne Steele, Westbridge's golden couple? I arrived alone. I was no longer playing by their rules. The ballroom glimmered with fairy lights. Crystal chandeliers, gold-accented furniture, champagne pyramids. And eyes everywhere waiting for drama. I found it immediately. Vivienne stood beneath one of the grand arches, smiling as photographers clicked away. Her dress was blush silk. Her hair curled in delicate waves. And there, resting on her wrist, was my bracelet. Except this time it wasn't subtle. I see you found something vintage, I said, appearing at her side. She flinched. Just slightly. Oh, she said innocently. This old thing. You know, Edith Blackwell, Julian's grandmother, used to wear that exact bracelet, I said loud enough for the people around us to hear. She left it to her daughter-in-law in her will. Vivienne blinked. Well, maybe she gave it to someone else by mistake. I tilted my head. Mistakes don't get registered into legal documents. A hush fell over our little circle. I just find it curious, I continued, voice light as champagne, how an heirloom passed down for generations ended up on the wrist of someone who isn't even family. A few guests nearby murmured. Vivienne's eyes darkened. Julian gave it to me. Julian doesn't own it, I said sweetly. The will is very clear. It belongs to the legal wife of the Blackwell heir. That's still me last I checked. Her fingers curled over the bracelet. Well, she said stiffly, maybe not for long. I smiled. We'll see. I turned and walked away, leaving her standing in a pool of whispers. That night, I sat in my study with a copy of Edith Blackwell's full will spread before me, the part that had been sealed until recently. With Julian's grandmother gone and her terms fully matured, her remaining assets were officially mine. 51% ownership of Blackwell Enterprises. Full rights to Hawthorne Estate. Access to the Blackwell Trust. She hadn't left these things to Julian. She had left them to me. Because I was the one who saved her life. Because I gave up my hands and my future, for her family. Because she knew, even if no one else did, that I would never take the Blackwell name lightly. At midnight I texted my lawyer. Claire, initiate full activation. Tomorrow morning. I want the board notified first. Lawyer, confirmed. Do you want to notify Julian? Claire, no. Let him read it in the minutes. The next morning, the Blackwell Enterprises Board of Directors opened their inboxes to an emergency notice. Claire Whitmore through the posthumous transfer of assets from Edith Blackwell, now held controlling interest. It was accompanied by a formal photo of me, standing in front of the Hawthorne estate gates, the will and the deed to the trust in my hands. They had called me a wild card. A charity case who lucked her way into wealth. They thought they could replace me. What they didn't know is, I had never once been afraid to lose the crown. Because the truth is, I was the one holding the sword. It was nearly 1 a.m. when the phone rang. I let it buzz for 5 long seconds before answering. I already knew who it was. Only one person called me at ungodly hours with the entitlement of royalty. Claire. Delilah's voice screeched through the line, ragged and shrill. You have to come right now. Please just, please. I sat on the velvet chaise in my study, wrapped in a blanket, sipping mint tea like it was a calm night. What happened? I asked dryly. There was a little accident. She hiccuped. Some idiot backed into my Porsche. The guys are being jerks and the cops are on their way. You have to come talk to them. You were drinking. No, well, just a little, she wailed. But not enough to matter. Please, Claire, they'll listen to you. Just, come fix it. I didn't reply right away. Claire? She asked a little more hesitantly. I'm not your fixer, Delilah, I said calmly. I'm your sister-in-law. For now. I hung up. Then I forwarded the location she'd sent me to my media contact at Westbridge Insider. Within an hour the story was trending. Breaking, Blackwell heiress caught in drunk driving scandal. Delilah Blackwell, daughter of the elite Blackwell family, was caught with a group of friends under the influence after a minor collision in downtown Westbridge. Eyewitnesses say the group was belligerent and refused to cooperate with authorities, citing Blackwell immunity. Sources say one call was made, not to her mother Eleanor, not to her brother Julian, but to her sister-in-law Claire Whitmore. By dawn my inbox was full of press requests. I hadn't even had breakfast yet. Around 9 a.m. my phone rang again. This time the caller ID flashed in full caps, Eleanor Blackwell. I picked up and held the phone a few inches away from my face, already bracing for the screech. You ungrateful parasite. Eleanor shrieked. Do you know what you've done? You left my daughter in the hands of the police. You embarrassed this family publicly. I didn't do anything, I said smoothly. Delilah did. Everything you eat, everything you wear, this family paid for it. And now, I said, standing from my seat and walking toward the front hallway, I'm returning the favor. What are you? I hung up. Outside, my legal team and 4 uniformed security guards waited by the gates of Hawthorne Estate. It was time. We arrived at the Blackwell ancestral home just after 10 a.m. I hadn't stepped foot inside since the night I saw Julian with Vivienne at the gala. But now I wasn't coming quietly. Eleanor opened the doors herself, still in her silk robe, eyes puffy and red from either crying or rage. Behind her, Delilah sat on the staircase, wearing sunglasses indoors and holding an iced coffee like it could hide her shame. What is this? Eleanor demanded. Why are there lawyers here? My attorney, Thomas, handed her an envelope. Madam, this is a formal notice of estate transfer per the sealed portion of Edith Blackwell's will. Eleanor blinked. What sealed portion? The one that was withheld until the rightful heir activated it, I said, stepping into the hallway. Me. Delilah stood up. What the hell are you talking about? I'm talking, I said coolly, about the fact that Edith Blackwell left me 70% of Blackwell Enterprises shares, full ownership of Hawthorne Estate and control over the family trust. That's impossible, Eleanor spat. Is it? I smiled. She left the rest of you exactly what you deserved. Nothing. You don't belong in this house. Eleanor shrieked. You married into this family. And now, I said, gesturing around, this house, this legacy, this empire, it all belongs to the one person who actually protected it. Thomas stepped forward. Per legal order, we are requesting immediate vacating of the estate by Ms. Eleanor Blackwell and Ms. Delilah Blackwell. You are trespassing on private property. You can't do this. Delilah cried. You don't even care about this family. No, I said, stepping closer, but I care about my child not growing up in a house built on lies. Delilah stared, stunned. Eleanor's voice shook. You're pregnant. I smiled without answering. I gave you everything. Eleanor screamed. I gave you status. I gave you my son. And I gave you silence, I said. For 5 years. That's over now. I turned to the guards. Escort them to their rooms. They have 1 hour to pack. Eleanor and Delilah were dragged, shrieking, up the stairs. I stood beneath the grand chandelier, once terrified to even walk across this marble. Now it echoed beneath my heels like a drumbeat. They thought they could erase me. They forgot I was the one holding the deed. The eviction became the media story of the week. Camera with flash, Blackwell matriarch ousted by daughter-in-law. Camera with flash, Claire Whitmore inherits 70% of empire. Source confirms she controls Blackwell Trust. Camera with flash, Delilah Blackwell spotted moving into two-bedroom apartment in central Westbridge. Eleanor tried to fight back, of course. She attempted to freeze assets, slander me on social media, even fake a health scare. Nothing worked. Why? Because without my signature, neither she nor Delilah could access the trust, the cards, or the company accounts. Delilah's spending was slashed. Her tuition checks never cleared. Her luxury credit cards were suspended. And I made sure her name was removed from all Blackwell beneficiary lists. She was just a girl with a big mouth and no inheritance now. As for me, I moved into Hawthorne Estate with boxes, a team of staff I personally hired, and silence. Julian came home 3 days later looking confused. I met him in the drawing room, the same place where his mother once held up Vivienne's magazine and told me I was unworthy. "You didn't even call," he said. "I don't need to explain myself to someone who missed dinner with his own mother to buy an island for an ex." He winced. "Claire, did you read the board minutes?" He nodded slowly. "I did." "Then you know I'm not going anywhere." He stepped forward. "You don't have to do this. We can talk." I stepped back. "I'm not doing anything, Julian. I'm everything now. And if you want to stay, you'll be the one following my lead." He didn't respond. He just looked at me. And for the first time in years he saw me. Not the accessory. Not the placeholder. Not the warm body in the master bedroom. But the woman who'd built this kingdom while everyone else played pretend. That night I stood in the center of the master bedroom, looking out over the estate grounds, lit softly in the moonlight. This wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. They threw me into the wolves thinking I'd run. Instead I came back leading the pack. It started with a whisper. A single comment on an anonymous gossip forum. Claire Whitmore's entire medical degree was probably fake. Has anyone seen her actually practice since she married up? I might have ignored it, if it hadn't appeared under 3 different news articles about the Blackwell family in less than 24 hours. Then the whispers multiplied. She gave up surgery so easily. Probably wasn't qualified to begin with. Social climber. She married Julian Blackwell for money and faked her resume. Never trust a woman who hides behind her husband's name. I didn't need a team of tech experts to trace the origin of the smear campaign. My instincts already knew who was behind it. Vivienne Steele. The woman who claimed elegance, grace, and class, and attacked behind the cover of a black avatar and a burner account. But the web is never truly anonymous. By midweek, the Blackwell Enterprises PR department sent me an internal report. The IP address tied to the smear campaign originated from a marketing firm owned by the Steele family investment group. Vivienne had gone from flaunting borrowed heirlooms to lighting matches she couldn't control. But the universe has a curious sense of timing. That same afternoon, the hospital where I'd once practiced released a formal statement on their website. "We are proud to welcome back Dr. Claire Whitmore as an honorary surgical consultant." They included a photograph from my teaching days, white coat, ID badge, a young intern at my side. The statement described my previous work as invaluable, citing rare cases I had successfully led. They called me a once-in-a-generation surgical mind whose career was tragically interrupted but never forgotten. The site crashed from traffic in under an hour. And just like that, the narrative shifted. Patients I had treated years ago flooded the comments. "Dr. Whitmore saved my daughter's life. She diagnosed my wife's rare condition after 3 other hospitals failed. She's the reason I walk today." From socialite slander to online sainthood, it took less than a day. I watched from my office in Hawthorne Estate, one leg crossed over the other, sipping lavender tea. Vivienne had tried to drown me in shadows. Instead I became a lighthouse. But the true humiliation was still to come. Late one evening, as I reviewed quarterly investment proposals, my assistant forwarded a real estate document. It was the registration of Crescent Isle. The island Julian had gifted Vivienne when she returned. The one Vivienne had all but flaunted to the press. The owner, Claire Whitmore. I blinked. I scrolled again. And there it was, clear as daylight. I was the sole registered proprietor. My signature. My name. The property had been under my name for over a year. I stared at it dumbfounded. Then slowly I smiled. 2 days later I flew to Crescent Isle unannounced. A sleek black boat delivered me to the shore. The breeze carried salt and silence. The island was smaller than I expected, maybe 4 square kilometers of untouched beauty and winding palms. A private paradise. At the end of the dock stood a familiar silhouette, hands in his pockets facing the water. Julian. He turned when he heard my heels on the planks. His expression was unreadable. I knew you'd come, he said softly. I always do, I replied. Until I don't. We stared at each other for a long moment. I suppose you're here about the island, he said. I held up the document. Why is this in my name? He didn't hesitate. Because it was meant for you. Boys. I started the process after our second anniversary. I wanted it to be a surprise. I gave a bitter laugh. So surprising, you forgot to tell me even when you let your ex flaunt it on social media. She was never supposed to know. My assistant leaked the registry change to the wrong broker, and it hit the press before I could explain. Convenient. Julian stepped closer. Claire, I swear. I held up a hand. Don't. He paused. I'm not here to hear excuses, I said. I'm here to reclaim what's mine. Then I walked past him and stepped onto the sand, my sand, and let the moment root itself like a crown atop my head. That night the truth came out. A journalist from the Westbridge Ledger published an exposé that tore Vivienne Steele's spotless image into shreds. Vivienne Steele. Heiress or hoax? Sources confirmed that the former socialite-turned-executive falsified credentials at multiple overseas firms. She held a series of high-paying jobs she was not qualified for, resulting in millions in damages and nearly bankrupting a biotech startup in Berlin. The article included quotes from whistleblowers, screenshots of doctored emails, and evidence that she had been blacklisted quietly in several European business circles. Her LinkedIn profile was deleted within hours. By morning, Vivienne's name had plummeted from Westbridge's darling to its greatest embarrassment. Julian came to my study the next day, holding a newspaper with Vivienne's face splashed across the front page. She's finished, he said. She did it to herself. She wasn't always like this, he murmured, sinking onto the couch. You say that like I'm supposed to feel sorry for her, I said. He looked at me. I don't expect anything. Not anymore. Good, I replied, returning to my work. Then I looked up again. Julian. He met my eyes. You once told me you married me because your grandmother asked you to. His lips parted slightly. Claire. I know now why she asked you to, I continued, voice soft. Because she knew I wouldn't need the Blackwell name to survive. But maybe the Blackwell name needed me. He didn't answer. Why an island? I asked finally, my voice brittle. What was it supposed to mean? Julian stepped beside me. I thought we needed something untouched. Private. Just ours. I was planning it as a honeymoon gift, but work kept getting in the way. I gave a humorless laugh. So instead Vivienne claimed it first. That wasn't the plan. But it's what happened. He looked down. The title's in your name, Claire. I registered it that way over a year ago. Then why let her talk about it in the press like you handed it to her on a gold platter? I didn't know until it was too late. I told the assistant to keep it quiet, but the wrong broker leaked the listing. Vivienne assumed, and I didn't correct her fast enough. I turned to face him. You didn't correct her at all, Julian. He opened his mouth, then closed it. That bracelet, I continued, was the last straw. She's walking around in public wearing the Blackwell heirloom, smiling like it belongs to her. And you, silent, always silent. His voice dropped. I didn't give her the bracelet. Then who did? He hesitated. My mother. Of course. Eleanor Blackwell. The one woman who had always despised me, and adored Vivienne like a second daughter. Perhaps in her mind the rightful daughter-in-law had finally returned. But that decision wasn't hers to make. 2 days later I returned to the city. The air felt heavier, buzzing with gossip. Vivienne had been spotted entering Blackwell Enterprises, full makeup, fitted white dress and sunglasses that screamed, I still matter. I received word from my assistant just after lunch. She's here, Mia said over the intercom. demanding to see Mr. Blackwell. Refuses to speak with anyone else. I stood from my desk. Clear my afternoon. I'll handle this personally. When I entered the executive lobby, Vivienne was already halfway through her performance. I have every right to see Julian, she told the receptionist. This company is partially funded by Steel Assets and I have a standing relationship with. That relationship, I interrupted, ended the moment you forged headlines with someone else's island. Vivienne spun around. Her smile was practiced but her eyes were wary. Well, look who's here, she said. Westbridge's favorite heiress by accident. Still holding on to that bracelet? I asked. Her hand instinctively moved to her wrist. I don't recall returning it to you being a requirement, she said coolly. I smiled. That's funny because I do. That heirloom only belongs to the legal Blackwell wife. You really think a piece of jewelry decides who belongs in this family? No, I said, stepping closer. But legacy does. And you've done nothing but tarnish it. He stiffened. Julian's the one who gave me a place in his life. I tilted my head. Then why hasn't he come down to greet you? Her silence answered everything. A soft ding sounded as the elevator doors opened. Julian stepped out, his expression unreadable. Vivienne, he said stiffly. Why are you here? She moved toward him with that graceful glide she'd mastered in high society circles. I wanted to talk. In private. There's nothing left to say, he replied, not moving. Her eyes widened. You can't be serious. I am. He looked past her. Claire has the final word on anything concerning the Blackwell legacy. Vivienne stared at him, mouth agape. You're deferring to her? I'm standing beside my wife, he said. As I should have done from the beginning. He took a step back. You let me wear your grandmother's bracelet. You let the media think. I never gave you that bracelet, he said coldly. And I won't let you keep pretending it belongs to you. A tense silence followed. Then I extended my hand toward her. Give it back. Vivienne's lips pressed into a thin line. Her fingers hovered over the bracelet. She didn't move. If you don't, I said quietly, I'll have legal file a claim, along with a restraining order preventing you from impersonating a Blackwell affiliate again. The room pulsed with discomfort. Her hand trembled as she unlatched the clasp and removed the bracelet. She placed it in my palm without a word. I closed my hand around it and stepped back. Vivienne looked around the room, at the silent staff, the closed elevator doors, and Julian's unreadable expression. Her empire had crumbled. And this was the final collapse. I see, she whispered, voice barely audible. So this is how you all win. No, I said, sliding the bracelet into my coat pocket. This is how I reclaim what was already mine. That night, I sat at my dressing table holding the bracelet beneath the lamplight. It still smelled faintly of Edith's favorite rose perfume, the scent she wore the day she told me, "You're not marrying into power. You are the power." I hadn't understood what she meant then. I did now. Vivienne left Westbridge the next morning. No press statement. No goodbyes. Just a whisper of scandal in her wake. Julian watched the news from the couch as I walked into the room. She's gone, he said. Good. I should have said something sooner. About everything. Yes, I said. You should have. He stood. But I'll say it now. I'm sorry, Claire. For the silence. For the hurt. For the things I let go too far. I looked at him. You didn't just let them go. You let me go. Julian stepped closer. I'm here now. You don't get credit for being late to your own marriage. His shoulders sank slightly, but he nodded. I don't want to ask for anything more. I just want to earn back your trust. I looked down at the bracelet resting in my hand. I won't hand it back, I said, just because you finally showed up. Then I'll stay, he said gently, until you believe I'm not going anywhere. And for once he did. Back at Hawthorne Estate, I stood in my study, scrolling through the overwhelming wave of support. My phone buzzed nonstop. News outlets, well-wishers, old colleagues. And then, another call. Delilah. I let it go to voicemail. But less than 30 minutes later she appeared at the gates. Makeup smudged, hair frizzy, her designer handbag replaced by a knockoff. My head of security called up. Do you want me to send her away, ma'am? I considered it. Then changed my mind. Let her in. She came into the grand hall like a wilted flower, unsure of where to put her hands. "Sister-in-law," she said quietly. "I'm sorry." "Are you?" I said, leaning against the banister. "Or are you just out of money?" Her mouth opened, then closed again. "School won't let me back in without tuition," she admitted. "My cards are frozen." The car was repossessed. "Actions have consequences," I replied. "You've been bailed out your whole life." "Not this time." Tears welled up in her eyes. But I didn't know Vivienne was going to use me like that. She told me if I helped her, she'd get me a management job after graduation. I laughed softly. "She promised you power for betraying your own family. And you fell for it." Delilah sobbed. "I know I messed up. But I'm really trying now. Please just help me a little. 1 semester's fees. That's all." I tilted my head. "Delilah, when you were mocking me in boutiques offering to introduce me to cuter guys, were you thinking of family then? Or just the alliance with your beloved Vivienne?" She looked away. I didn't wait for an answer. "I won't reinstate your tuition," I said. "And your allowance? Permanently cut. Consider this an education you can't buy." Her shoulders shook as she cried, but I walked past her without flinching. That girl was no longer my responsibility. Julian entered my office that evening, watching me from the doorway. "You were hard on her," he said softly. "She was harder on me." He stepped inside, settling across from my desk. "You're not the same woman I married." "I know. You're stronger now. Clearer. Sharper." I looked up from the documents. "And does that scare you?" "No," he said after a moment. "It humbles me." His words caught me off guard. He stood and walked toward me, eyes serious. "You gave this family structure when it was chaos. You turned scandal into strategy. You made the Blackwell name mean something again." He paused. "I don't just want you back, Claire. I want to stand beside you." I didn't reply. Not yet. His apology wasn't words. It had to be action. And that action came days later, in the most unexpected form. A breaking news alert flashed across the television. Vivienne Steele arrested on charges of corporate fraud and misuse of investor funds. I turned the volume up. The news anchor explained that Vivienne had been under quiet investigation by multiple international firms. She had falsified her resume at several biotech companies and redirected investor money into personal shell corporations. Her actions had resulted in 2 company collapses and multiple unpaid employees. Julian walked into the room and saw me watching. "I didn't know it was this bad," he said. "I did," I murmured. "Eventually. She left a trail." "She always did," I said. "But you only see it after the fire." He looked at me. "Are you happy now?" I paused. "No. But I'm free." Later that night, I walked alone through the halls of Hawthorne Estate, the weight of history behind every step. I paused in the ancestral gallery, portraits of Blackwell men and their dutiful wives lining the walls. But now there was a new addition. A simple plaque. One photograph. Me. Claire Whitmore Blackwell. Chairwoman. Majority shareholder. Surgeon. Mother-to-be. I looked at it, then at my reflection in the glass. I didn't need their crown. I'd built my own throne. The morning I told Julian I was pregnant, the city was wrapped in fog. Maybe it was poetic. Maybe it was just Westbridge in October. But something about the way the clouds hung low over the skyline made the world feel quieter, heavier, like it knew what was about to be said. He arrived at the ancestral home just after 10, unannounced but expected. I didn't ask how he got through security. He was still a Blackwell after all. I met him in the sunroom. He paused at the threshold, eyes landing on the legal folders beside me, and then on me, hand resting lightly on my stomach. His voice cracked the silence. "Claire, what?" "I'm pregnant," I said calmly. Just like that. No dramatic build-up. No testing his emotions first. I didn't owe him that anymore. Julian didn't move. He stared at me like the earth had tilted under his feet. Since when?" "Since before the boardroom betrayal. Since before Vivienne wore my bracelet. Since before you let your mother call me a mistake." He looked gutted. Not surprised. Gutted. "I didn't know. I figured." He stepped forward slowly as if afraid I'd disappear. "I swear to you, Claire, I never would've." "But you did," I interrupted gently but firmly. "You did all of it. Whether you knew I was carrying your child or not, you chose someone else. Julian dropped into the chair across from me, hands shaking slightly. I thought I loved Vivienne. I nodded. I know. He looked up, eyes red. But I didn't. Not really. He was a memory. You were the reality. You were the one who stayed. The one who gave everything. The one who fought. And you were the one who watched me drown. The words landed between us like stones in still water. I came to say I'm sorry, he whispered. And not in the way people say it just to feel better. I mean it clear. I am sorry. For every moment I made you feel less than. For letting you fight battles alone. For mistaking loyalty for convenience. I didn't speak. I let the apology settle. Vivienne's gone, he added after a moment. She's facing trial. I've severed ties with my mother and Delilah. Blackwell Enterprises belongs to you now, legally and in name. I know, I said. Everything I had, it's yours. I looked at him, finally. And I said the words he needed and feared to hear. You'll have full rights to see your child, Julian. He looked up, hope flickering. But you'll never have me. The hope vanished, replaced with resignation. Not bitterness. Not bargaining. Just the truth. We sat in silence, both knowing it was the end. Not of responsibility. Not of parenthood. But of us. Whatever version of us had once existed, the naive love, the political marriage, the betrayal, the aftermath, it had all been burned away. What remained was the quiet understanding between two people who had failed each other, and who would now protect something far more important than their pride. He stood at last, eyes misted. Thank you, he said, for not turning our child into a war zone. I'm building them a kingdom, I replied. Not a battlefield. Julian nodded once. Then he left. That evening I stood at the top of the ancestral home's balcony. Below me, the lights of Westbridge stretched out like a golden river. The Blackwell legacy was mine now. The board, the estate, the assets. Not because I married into it. Because I survived it. Vivienne had tried to reclaim a crown that was never hers. Eleanor and Delilah tried to erase me from the story. And Julian handed me the ashes. I turned them into gold. Inside, on the polished marble table, sat the original heirloom bracelet. Restored. Gleaming. I didn't wear it. I didn't need to. Some women wore their power on their wrists. I carried mine in my blood. In the child growing inside me. In the empire I rebuilt from scratch. The wind lifted as I stepped further onto the balcony, one hand resting on my belly. A tiny kick answered my touch. I smiled. Soft. Certain. No longer the outsider. No longer the girl waiting to be chosen. I had chosen myself. They gave me a crown they thought I couldn't carry. I whispered into the night. I turned it into a kingdom. The end.